Welcome back to Spooky Stories. Tonight's episode is one for the brave because we're diving into two truly chilling accounts of the unexplained. Our first story is set in an old government housing unit where a young family, husband, wife, and 2 children, thought they'd found a fresh start. Instead, they stumbled into a living nightmare. It's a tale of footsteps on the roof, a woman in the mirror, doorbells at midnight, and a haunting that grew darker and darker until its name was finally revealed. Emily Carter, a spirit who lived and died where they slept. Our second story comes to us from Ethan in Colorado, a seasoned long-distance rider with a passion for the open road. But what began as a thrilling motorcycle tour with friends into the San Juan Mountains turned into something far more sinister. A missing friend, footsteps around the tents, a ragged man who vanished when the light hit him, and the laughter of unseen children circling their camp. 2 stories, 2 settings, 2 very different nightmares, yet both share that same creeping truth. Some places do not want you there. So turn off the lights, lock the doors, and get ready to settle in, because these stories are about to take you somewhere you may not come back from.
This happened when we first moved into a new government housing unit. The place was old, so old in fact that the buildings dated back to the early 1900s. The structure carried the weight of history, and the first time I stepped inside, I could feel something clinging to the air. Still, I was excited. My husband, our 2 kids, and I finally had a bigger place. I thought it was going to be a fresh start. The housing complex was in a secluded area, surrounded by patches of woods, overgrown weeds, and muddy lots. At night, the silence there wasn't comforting. It was suffocating, the kind that made you feel watched. It was the middle of winter, freezing cold, and the atmosphere in that house unsettled me from the very beginning. The walls, the rooms, even the way the windows groaned in the wind, it all felt wrong. But I told myself I was just being paranoid. For the first week, everything seemed fine. We settled in, unpacked our boxes, even started to feel at home. But by the second week, strange things began to happen. At first, it was subtle. In the middle of the night, when the whole house was dead silent, and even the heat pipes weren't clanging, I would hear faint footsteps in the yard, crunching against the frost. Sometimes it sounded like someone pacing across our roof, heavy, deliberate steps. Whenever I got up to check, I never saw anything. My husband thought I was imagining it. We tried to ignore it. But then, it got worse. It was late, maybe around midnight, when I woke up to an odd stillness in the room. Our bed faced the wall with a dresser, and above it sat a wide old mirror. At first, I thought I was dreaming. But then, I saw her. In the reflection, a woman stood at the head of the bed, right next to my husband. She was staring down at him with an intensity that froze my blood. Her face was striking, unnaturally beautiful in a way that didn't seem real. Her features were sharp, her skin almost glowing in the dim light bleeding in through the blinds. My husband slept peacefully, unaware of her presence. I glanced at his side of the bed in real life, but there was nothing there. She was only in the mirror. I couldn't scream. My body felt heavy, pinned by fear. I just laid there, watching as the figure lingered. Then, slowly, she began to fade, her outline dissolving into the shadows until the mirror showed nothing but our dim bedroom again. Calm, uncertain. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, maybe even a dream, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Something had entered our lives. And that was only the beginning. Not long after the mirror incident, something new started happening. Our doorbell began to ring in the middle of the night. At first, we thought it was some kind of prank, maybe kids from the neighborhood messing around. But the thing was, the pattern never changed. It was always the same rhythm, like someone pressing the bell in a strange, deliberate sequence. One evening, my husband had taken the kids to the park, and I wasn't feeling well. I stayed home, lying on the couch, waiting for him to bring dinner back so I wouldn't have to cook. That's when it happened again. The bell rang, sharp, clear, that same eerie rhythm. I froze. My stomach dropped. Slowly, I got up and called out, "Who is it?" No answer. The bell rang again, louder this time, echoing through the empty house. Something inside me snapped. I couldn't take the suspense anymore. I rushed to the door, unlocked it, and yanked it open. For a split second, I saw her. A woman running down the street. Her long hair flowing, her steps too fast, too smooth, almost gliding. She turned the corner at the end of the block and vanished. I stood there, shivering in the winter air, my hand still clutching the doorknob. There was no doubt in my mind now. The same woman I had seen in the mirror was here, outside our home, and she wasn't going away.
Not long after the night of the doorbell, my husband came home from work looking uneasy. He told me something that made my skin crawl. On his way back, one of our neighbors had pulled him aside. The man swore he had seen my husband walking late at night, and I was with him. He described me perfectly. My height, my hair, even the coat I usually wore. But I hadn't left the house. I was home with the kids that entire night. The thought chilled me. Whatever this thing was, it could take my form. That same night, I woke to find my husband sitting at the edge of the bed, his shirt lifted. In the glow of the lamp, I saw them. Long, angry red scratches across his back and ribs. They looked fresh, as if clawed by something with sharp nails. I rushed over, panicked. "What happened? Did you fall? Did something scratch you?" He shook his head. "I don't know. I just woke up and they were there. It burned like fire when I touched them." I couldn't speak. My mind went back to that beautiful, terrifying woman in the mirror, staring at him as he slept. Whatever she wasn't just watching anymore. She had touched him. A few nights later, the weather turned violent. The sky opened up with heavy rain. Thunder cracked so loud it rattled the windows. The power flickered, then went out. The house plunged into darkness, except for the dim glow of lightning flashing through the blinds. That's when we heard it. Bang, bang, bang. Something was pounding on our front door, hard enough to shake the frame. It wasn't a knock. It was the sharp, hollow clang of metal striking wood over and over. My husband grabbed a flashlight. He crept toward the sound. I followed close behind, my heart slamming in my chest. He swung the light toward the door just as the banging stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, in the beam of the flashlight, we saw her. A woman stood outside in the storm, her hair plastered to her face, her dress soaked through. In her hand was a dented metal bowl. She beat it against the door as she stared directly at my husband. And then her eyes. My God, her eyes. They weren't human. They glowed, furious, burning red, gleaming in the darkness like coals pulled straight from a fire. She lifted her head slowly, locking eyes with him through the glass panel in the door. That was when he snapped the light off and whispered, "Don't move." We stood frozen, in the pitch dark, listening as the pounding started again. Bang, bang, bang. The storm passed, but the sense of dread never left. One evening, while tidying the bedroom, I noticed something strange. A small, jagged hole in the plaster near the corner of the wall. It looked like it had crumbled inward, the edges rough and uneven, as if something had been pressing through from the other side. At first I thought maybe it was just age. The house was old after all. But when I leaned closer, I froze. From deep inside the darkness of that hole, a faint red glow flickered. My breath caught. I bent down slowly, almost against my will. And that's when I saw it. An eye. A single, glowing, blood-red eye staring straight at me through the wall. I stumbled back, slamming my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. My husband rushed in. I pointed with a shaking hand. He stepped forward, saw it for himself, and his face went pale. Without a word, he ran to the garage, grabbed a bucket of cement mix, and within the hour, he sealed the hole completely. But even after the wall was patched smooth, I couldn't shake the feeling. The eye wasn't gone. It was only hidden.
A few nights after we sealed the hole, the house went silent again. No whispers, no scratching, almost like it was holding its breath. That night, my husband and I were in our bedroom, trying to convince ourselves everything was fine. He stood behind me while I brushed my hair in front of the dresser mirror. I remember catching his reflection, tall, tired, but steady, standing just a step behind me. I blinked, and suddenly, there was someone else standing between us. She wasn't there in the room, only in the mirror. A tall, thin woman, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, her face hidden by tangled, blackened hair. The stench of something burnt filled the room, acrid and suffocating. I gasped, turning quickly, but in real life, there was no one between us. My husband reached out, asking what was wrong. In the mirror, The woman's head snapped up. Her face, charred, blistered, half melted, stared back at me. Her mouth opened wide, but no sound came out. I dropped the brush. The mirror shook as if something on the other side was trying to break through. Then, just as suddenly as she appeared, she was gone. We tried to calm down, but later that night, as we lay in bed, I felt a weight press against the mattress. Slowly, I leaned over the edge and looked underneath. She was there, crawling from the shadows under our bed, her burned face inches from mine. After that night, sleep stopped existing for me. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound of her. It always started the same way. First, the air would go still, not just quiet, but dead. Even the clock seemed to tick softer. Then, a faint smell of burnt wood crept in from nowhere, and at exactly 3:00 a.m., she'd be there, standing at the foot of the bed, motionless, her charred hands hanging at her sides, her head bent forward like she was listening for something. I'd try to move, but my body felt pinned to the mattress. My husband, lying beside me, never stirred. I don't know if he was asleep or if she made sure he stayed that way. Then she would whisper. It wasn't words at first, more like the sound of wind whistling through broken glass. But slowly, syllables began to form. Why did you wake me? Every time I heard it, it felt like the temperature dropped 10 degrees. My breath came out in white mist. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come. I'd shut my eyes, hoping she'd vanish. But when I opened them again, she'd be closer. Until one night, she leaned over me, her scorched face inches from mine, and hissed, "You can't close what you opened." Then the room would go black. When I woke, the sun was rising, and she was gone. But the smell of burned flesh stayed in the sheets. By the fourth night, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed a small bag before sunset and told myself I'd leave before she came back. Around 2:30 a.m., I slipped out of bed. My husband still slept, his breathing steady and oblivious. I didn't even bother to leave a note. I just wanted out. The hallway felt colder than usual. Every creak of the old wooden floorboards echoed like a gunshot. I grabbed my car keys, my phone, and a flashlight. When I opened the front door, the night air hit me, sharp and metallic, like blood. The street lights flickered. The world outside felt deserted, frozen, as if even the crickets had stopped to watch. I walked fast down the driveway, fumbling with the keys. My heart hammered against my ribs. I kept telling myself, if I can just reach the car, I'll be safe. Then I heard it. Soft footsteps, crunching in the gravel. Behind me. Slow, deliberate. I spun around with the flashlight. Nothing.
just the long shadow of the house stretching across the yard. But when I swung the light back to the car, she was there, standing on the hood, her head cocked sideways, burned hair hanging in clumps, her hands pressed flat against the windshield like she was peering inside. Her voice came out like rust scraping metal. "You think you can leave?" The keys slipped from my fingers. I bolted for the road, but every direction I turned, she was already there, at the corner, in the field, stepping out from behind the trees. It wasn't just the house. It was me. I collapsed on the asphalt, sobbing, the night around me thick and silent. Then she leaned close enough for me to smell the ash on her breath and whispered, "You can't run from what's inside you." And then she was gone.
I don't remember how long I sat there on the cold asphalt. By the time I got back up, the sky was paling, that strange gray blue before sunrise. My hands were trembling, my throat raw from crying. I walked back toward the house slowly, not because I wanted to, but because something in me knew running wasn't going to work anymore. She wasn't bound to the walls or the basement. She was bound to me. When I stepped inside, the air felt heavier, almost wet, like a storm about to break. My husband was still asleep upstairs, oblivious. The hallway stretched out, darker than it had ever looked. I spoke out loud. "I'm done running. What do you want from me?" Then, a faint crackling sound, like wood burning. A shape materialized at the far end of the hall. She stepped forward slowly, her skin blackened and flaking like charred paper. Her eyes glowing dull orange, as if embers lived behind them. "You live where I died. You sleep in my room. You walk above my ashes. You ignore me." I swallowed hard. "I'm not ignoring you. I didn't know. Just tell me what you want." She tilted her head, the way she always did, and for the first time, her expression softened. "My name," she whispered. "Say my name. Remember me." In a flash of memory, from an old newspaper clipping I'd seen under the basement stairs, I blurted it out. "Emily Carter." The house seemed to exhale with me. The walls groaned, and then everything went still. She blinked at me, and for a moment the burn marks faded. She looked almost human. "Thank you," she said. "Now you know." Then she stepped backward into the darkness and dissolved, leaving only the smell of smoke and rain. I stood in the hallway, my heart still pounding, but lighter somehow. For the first time since we'd moved in, the house felt empty, truly empty. The next morning, sunlight poured into the house like nothing had ever happened. No cold spots, no smell of ash, no footsteps pacing above us. My husband noticed the change immediately, though he didn't know why. I told her she was gone, but not how. Not yet. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But relief gave way to curiosity. Who was Emily Carter? Why had she been trapped here, bound to me? That afternoon, I drove to the town library. The building was small, old-fashioned, half-forgotten, the kind of place where history hides in dusty drawers. After a few hours with brittle newspapers and yellowed microfilm, I found her. Emily Carter. 32 years old, married, mother of one. Lived in the very same government quarters we'd moved into. In 1947, a fire ripped through the building. Faulty wiring, the article said. She and her little boy were trapped inside. Firefighters pulled her body from what is now our bedroom. The boy never made it out at all. Neighbors at the time swore they still heard cries in the night, long after the ruins were rebuilt. Most people dismissed it as folklore, but there it was, in black and white. Her death, her pain, her unfinished story. I realized then what she meant by, "You live where I died." We weren't just in her house, we were in her grave. When I spoke her name, I gave her back the one thing she lost in the flames, her identity, her memory. That night, the house was silent again. But I'll admit this much. Sometimes, when the wind shifts just right, I still smell smoke. And I wonder if Emily Carter is really gone, or just watching quietly now, waiting for someone else to forget her. So, that's the story of Emily Carter and the months we spent living inside her grave. We thought we were just renting an old government house, but we'd moved into the ashes of a tragedy. And maybe she wasn't haunting us out of malice at all. Maybe she only wanted to be remembered. Since the night I spoke her name, the house has stayed quiet. No footsteps, no whispers at 3 a.m., no red eyes staring through the dark. But every once in a while, when the air turns still and the lights flicker, I swear I hear a woman's voice, soft and distant, whispering from the walls, "Don't forget me." And that's when I realize a spirit doesn't need to show itself to still be present. Because the scariest hauntings are the ones that never truly end.
My name's Ethan, and I'm from Colorado. I've always had a passion for riding. Not just casual rides around town, I mean long-distance motorcycle tours. The kind where you pack up your gear and disappear into the mountains for days. That thrill of the open road, the biting wind in your face, the sense that you're in the movie of your own life. That's what keeps me hooked. A few years back, some friends and I planned a trip out toward the San Juan Mountains in southwestern Colorado. It wasn't my first long ride. I'd already been through plenty of scenic routes with other bikers. But this particular trip still stands out, burned into my memory, for reasons I never thought I'd have to relive. We had our bikes loaded with camping gear, repair kits, air pumps, spare clothes, tools, cooking supplies, the works. Our group never messed around. The smallest bike among us was a 600cc, so these weren't casual cruises. They were serious rides. We left before dawn,
and rode almost non-stop from 5 in the morning until close to 4 in the afternoon. By the time we finally rolled into a wide meadow near the base of the mountains, the sun was sinking low, and the air was turning sharp with cold. That meadow looked like something out of a postcard. Rolling grass, surrounded by tall pine trees, the mountain shadows spilling over us as if the world itself was folding into night. The beauty of it erased most of the exhaustion we'd built up on the ride. We set up our tents before darkness fell, and even managed to hire a local kid from a nearby village. He carried in firewood, brewed us some hot tea, and then headed back down the valley before the night grew dangerous for traveling. Not long after, a family arrived in an SUV. Rare sight out here. You needed guts, experience, and skill to drive these steep, narrow roads without stalling or skidding off the edge. But we weren't worried about them. We were focused on making our fire, cooking some food, and trying to thaw out our bones. Before I go further, I need to mention something. While we were setting up camp at dusk, one of my friends spotted a tent. Way off in the distance, deep between the trees. It didn't look new. From that far away, it seemed like it had been sitting there for quite a while. I remember squinting, trying to make out its shape, when one of the guys pointed and said, "Look, someone else has camped way out there." We shrugged it off. After all, mountain camping attracts all sorts. Nothing strange about another tent in the woods. At least that's what we thought then. That night, after cooking a small meal over the fire, we sat in a circle, laughing, trading stories, showing each other pictures and clips we'd taken along the road. The cold thickened, and eventually we were too tired to keep talking. Each of us crawled into our tents, bundled ourselves in sleeping bags, and tried to rest. That's when things began. Sometime past midnight, I woke up. At first, I didn't even open my eyes. I just lay there, half aware, cocooned in my sleeping bag. Something wasn't right. The night air was freezing, sharp enough to sting my nose with every breath. But it wasn't the cold that pulled me out of sleep. It was the sound. Crunch. 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 Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. They circled outside my tent. At first, I figured it had to be one of my buddies stumbling around in the dark, maybe heading to the tree line to take a leak. But then, the steps stopped, right beside my tent. Whoever it was didn't walk away. That's when I heard the faintest sound. The tug of a zipper. My tent door. Someone was trying to open it. My heart slammed so hard I thought it might punch through my chest. "Hello? Who's there?" The zipper froze. Absolute silence. I grabbed my phone, fumbling with stiff, numb fingers until the flashlight burst on. The beam hit my tent flap, and my stomach dropped. It was already half unzipped. "Marcus!" I hissed toward my friend's tent, my voice cracked from fear. "You awake?" I heard movement, then Marcus's groggy reply. "Ethan, what's wrong?" There's someone out here. But he didn't listen. I heard his zipper open, and then his light flicked on, sweeping across the clearing. Man, there's nobody here. And he was right. Or at least, that's what it looked like. The clearing was empty. No figures, no footprints fresh in the dirt. Just stillness. But the zipper of my tent, it was already open halfway. If nobody had been there, who pulled it down? If someone had been there, where had they gone?
Marcus and I woke the others. We figured if someone had been creeping around camp, we all needed to stay sharp. One by one, the tents unzipped, except Adam's. "Adam?" I called. No answer. I pulled his flap open. His sleeping bag was empty. At first, we thought maybe he'd gone off into the woods. We shouted his name. Nothing. Our voices carried into the trees, echoing back hollow, like the forest was mocking us. Panic settled in fast. We grabbed our flashlights, stuck together in a tight knot, and started scouring the meadow. Every crunch of our boots made me hyper-aware, and that's when I noticed it. Extra footsteps. Not ours. A faint delay, like something trailing just behind, imitating us. We stopped. The sounds stopped. A heartbeat later. "Jesus Christ," one of my buddies muttered. Another guy broke down, hands shaking, whispering a prayer under his breath. Still, we pushed deeper, toward the trees, toward the spot where we'd seen that other tent earlier. The glow of a lantern flickered through the pines, exactly where we'd seen it. When we got close, I swear, my blood ran cold. 2 shadows moved inside that tent. 2 people. And one of those voices, carried faintly through the fabric, was Adam's. We froze, listening. He wasn't calling for help. He was just talking, calmly, like he was having a late-night chat with someone. "Adam!" I shouted. The voices cut off instantly. The glow inside the tent stayed, but the talking stopped. My gut told me something was horribly wrong. We didn't wait. Marcus yanked the zipper and we stormed inside. Adam sat cross-legged on the floor of the tent. His eyes were wide open, staring straight ahead, blank as glass. His lips moved like he wanted to say something, but no sound came out. And he was alone. We all looked at each other in disbelief. From the outside, we had seen 2 figures, 2 shadows, clear as day. But now, only Adam. No second person. No trace anyone else had ever been there. "Adam, what the hell, man?" I shook his shoulder. He didn't react. Just blinked. Slow, like he was underwater. "Who were you talking to?" Marcus demanded. Nothing. We dragged him out of the tent. His body moved, but it felt wrong. Heavy, limp, like he was walking in a dream. I turned back once more. The lantern still glowed inside. And there, on the far wall of the tent, was a silhouette.
A shadow. Someone sitting perfectly still. But the space was empty. That shadow didn't belong to anybody inside. It was just sitting there, watching us leave. Back at camp, we sat Adam down by the fire. His skin was clammy, his eyes darting like he wasn't sure where he was. It took a while, but eventually he started talking. His voice low and shaky. He said he woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of someone calling his name. At first, he thought it was one of us. He stepped outside, followed the voice toward the trees. The deeper he went, the more it felt like the voice was pulling him along, urging him forward. He swore he saw a man waiting by that distant tent. Tall, thin, clothes ragged, like he'd been living out here for years. The man never smiled, never spoke a full sentence, just gestured for him to come closer. When Adam entered the tent, the man sat down across from him and started talking in this strange, flat rhythm. Not quite English, not quite anything. Adam said he couldn't even repeat the words. It was like they slipped out of his mind the second he heard them. Then silence. The man just stared at him. And the next thing he remembered was us barging in. While Adam whispered his story, I felt the fire shift behind me. I turned, and my heart nearly stopped. At the edge of the clearing, just beyond the reach of the firelight, stood a figure. Tall, thin, ragged clothes, watching us.
We froze around the fire. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The figure didn't step closer, didn't retreat, just stood there, swaying slightly, like the trees behind him. Marcus grabbed a flashlight. He swung the beam toward it. The second the light hit, the figure was gone. Not walked away, gone, like he'd never been there. That should have been the end of it. We should have packed up and left right then. But instead, we sat in stunned silence, too scared to move, too scared to speak. That's when we heard it. Laughter. High-pitched, playful, wrong. Children's voices, faint and echoing through the woods. The sound didn't match the setting. Out here in the middle of the mountains, miles from any town. The laughter grew louder, circling us, the same way the footsteps had around my tent. It wasn't one child. It was several. Giggling, whispering, darting just out of sight. One of my friends snapped. He shouted into the trees, voice cracking, "Shut up! Leave us alone!" Instant silence. And then, right behind his ear, clear as day, came a small, breathy voice. "Don't."
He spun around, swinging his flashlight wildly. Nothing. Just empty air. Adam started trembling again. His lips moved fast, whispering those strange, broken words he said he couldn't remember, like something was speaking through him. I swear, in that moment, I knew we weren't dealing with people. Whatever was out there wasn't human. After that whisper, none of us dared say another word. We pulled our chairs close to the fire, like that thin ring of light was the only thing keeping us alive. The woods around us stayed alive with movement. Twigs snapping, footsteps circling, a low whistle drifted through the pines, answered by a giggle that came from the opposite direction. Every time we shined our lights, the forest stared back blank and empty, yet the sounds never stopped. Adam grew worse. He rocked back and forth, muttering, sometimes choking on his words, like he was trying to cough something out of his throat. His eyes darted everywhere, following things we couldn't see. We can't sleep. We just stay awake till morning. That was Marcus. So we sat. Hours dragged on, every minute stretching like an eternity. The fire burned low, and nobody wanted to leave the circle to gather more wood. Our flashlights dimmed one by one. The darkness pressed closer, tighter, as if it wanted to swallow us whole. At one point, I swear I saw shapes moving between the trees. Small, hunched figures, darting on all fours, too quick for the light to catch. Another friend swore he saw the ragged man standing in the smoke of the fire itself, face half-formed, watching him. Time had no meaning. The night became endless. And then, finally, the sky began to pale. That first gray-blue light of dawn slid over the ridge. The laughter stopped. The footsteps faded. The forest went still. It was over. At least that's what we told ourselves. But Adam, he never really came back. Even after we packed up, even on the ride home, he sat silent, eyes unfocused, whispering to someone only he could see. And me? I'll never forget the sound of that child's voice breathing against my ear in the dark. It's been over a decade since that night in the mountains, and I still can't camp without hearing those sounds in the back of my mind. The footsteps, the laughter, that whisper telling us not to move. We never went back to that ridge. None of us even talk about camping anymore. The bikes got sold off, the gear boxed away. That trip broke something in all of us. Adam was never the same. He moved away a year later, cut off contact. Last I heard, he'd checked into a facility, said the voices hadn't stopped, said the man still visited him in his dreams, sometimes standing by his bed when he woke up. As for me, I tell myself it was exhaustion, paranoia, tricks of the dark. But deep down, I know what I saw. Shadows that moved without bodies. A man who vanished when light touched him. Children's laughter where no children should have been. People ask why I don't camp anymore, why I avoid the woods. I just smile and say, I grew out of it. The truth is, some places don't let you leave. A part of you stays behind. And I know, one night soon, I'll hear those footsteps outside my house, circling, waiting for me to unzip the door.
A heartfelt thank you to the brave souls who shared tonight's stories, to the anonymous family who lived through the haunting of Emily Carter's house, and to Ethan from Colorado for reliving that terrifying night in the San Juan Mountains with us. If you've experienced something chilling, unexplainable, or simply too strange to keep to yourself, send it in. Your story could be featured on a future episode. And if you enjoyed tonight's tales, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the bell icon so you never miss another night of horror. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories aren't just stories at all.